WSOM Richmond.
Sound of music. I said the sound of music. I said the sound of music. The sound of music.
Hey guys, welcome to Live from Sound of Music. I'm Bruce, your host, and tonight we are thrilled to have sound engineer extraordinaire Bob Strakele on the stage, safely social distance about 100 yards away across our warehouse at Sound of Music. How are you doing, Bob?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
It's good to see you. I mean, in one way, I'm glad to see you. On the other hand, I feel bad that you're not flying around the world or something right now.
Me too.
If y'all don't know, Bob is a worldwide traveling front of house sound engineer for bands like Slipknot, Avenged Sevenfold, and The War on Drugs. So Bob, how long have you been at home now?
I have been home since the end of February.
That's a long damn time for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's the longest I've been home in 22 years.
So on an average year, how many weeks out of the year would you be working out on the road?
I'd say about 9 months a year.
9 months a year? So you do get some home time?
Yeah, usually the schedule, depending on the band, obviously, but usually it's, a month to 6 weeks on and then come home for a week to 10 days. And obviously there's some slow periods around holidays and stuff, but, spring, summer, fall is always slamming.
So we're glad to see you again. Sad that you're not working doing what you love, but has the time at home have you learned anything different, or what are your thoughts having to spend more time in Richmond?
Well, obviously being at home with my family is amazing.
Yeah.
Being at home it's something you always want when you're on the road. It's I'm a husband, I'm a father, I got pets, I got a house, I got all that stuff that you miss when you're away. But I also have a mortgage and things like that to try to figure out how to handle. So
how did you get started in this crazy business?
It's kind of a complicated story, but I started playing guitar when I was 5 years old. When I was in high school, a friend of mine, Darren, and I started building a little studio, and it was mostly synthesizer based. That's kind of what we were into at the time. All throughout high school, I worked in the culinary business. I was a baker, and worked on like a pastry chef. Straight out of high school, I went to culinary school and moved to New York City. And so simultaneously, I got an internship while I was working in restaurants, I got an internship at a place called Loho Studios. And just started learning there. I never, in my time there, I never really even worked on a session, but I got to work on gear and I got to learn how to use the gear. And I was there for a while. It was a great experience, in between making coffee for whoever was.
I was going to ask about the coffee fetching, but you beat me to
I
it.
I was the runner, and then in between sessions, I'd be in the control room, zeroing out all the equipment, and and the owner, this guy Victor, would really kind of drill me on, okay, what's the difference between the 1064 module and the 1081 module or whatever. They had a kind of a Frankenstein Neve in there. So that kind of is how I got bit by the bug. And then one day I was out to dinner with a friend of mine, Brian Keeneland, who was the bass player for a band called the Bouncing Souls. Mm-hmm. And they were doing really well at the time. And he was just like, yo, you work at a studio, you should come be our sound guy. And it just so happened that the fine dining restaurant scene in New York is very slow in the summer. So my restaurant was closed for a few weeks, and it was the same weeks that they were on tour. So I flew to LA and I did my first show ever at the Palace in LA in front of about 3,000 people.
Wow.
And I had no idea what I was doing. And that's the God's honest truth. I mean, I had an idea, but you know, live sound and studio work are they're completely different animals. You know, there's a lot of variables you got to deal with in the live world. So yeah, and that was it. And then did that 3-week tour, worked for off and on for a little while more. I had a restaurant, started at a restaurant that was cool with me taking some time off every now and then. And you know, when you're in your early 20s and you're traveling in the world and making some money, you're just like, this is awesome. And you know, I liked being around music. I like going to shows every day. I just love everything about it, you know. And so at one point I had to make a decision, and the Souls were like, hey, we're going out. We just dropped a record. We'll be out all year if you want to join us. And that's what I did, and I stayed with them for 7 years.
Now, about how long in advance is your schedule usually set?
Usually I'll get hired by a band when they're, you know, starting to book the tour. So, you know, if a band is releasing a record, obviously their management team has a lot of homework to do to put a crew together, to book the tour, to book the equipment rentals, the trucks, the buses, all that. So usually I'll get hired, you know, up to like 6 months out. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, you just get a call from either a friend or a manager you've worked with before, and they say, hey, are you available? So-and-so is going out. It's going to be a 2-year run. Are you available and are you interested? And, you know, 9 times out of 10, it just kind of falls into place, you know? Sometimes you got to say no because you obviously don't want to, you want to do your best not to burn any bridges with your clients. But yeah, so I mean, I think I've been with Slipknot for like the last 1.5 years now, and I think I got hired in, I don't know, I got hired in like February, and I think we started in June. We started rehearsals in June, something like that. So anywhere like 3, 4, or 5 months out.
Now, when you talk about, like, some people get the idea that bands rehearse, but they might not know that the tech crew rehearses to have everything down too. Can you talk a little bit about what that's like ahead of time?
Sure, yeah. That again is a very band-specific thing because certain bands, you know, will just carry, as a sound guy, you might have a Pelican case full of microphones, or you might be just carrying a console. In my case, for the last few years, it's been, you know, several trucks of equipment. So with Slipknot, at least, I'll just keep mentioning it because it's what I'm doing right now. You know, we're at like 15 or 16 trucks, I think.
Wow.
So there's a lot of preparation involved in, you know, usually I'll leave home for prep like up to 2 weeks ahead of time before the first show, and I'll meet with the rest of the sound team at whatever the warehouse is that we're prepping at, depending on who the vendor is. So we use a company called 8th Day Sound, which is pretty globally known, big sound company. So we go prep at 8th Day, and it's important to just make sure that, you know, your equipment is the way you want it, it's packaged the way you want it, it's packaged in a method that allows you to set it up, troubleshoot, and take it down efficiently and fast. So yeah, we'll usually spend 3 days-ish at the shop and building our rigs, and then myself, my system tech, the PA techs, and the monitor engineer and his assistant will all get together and we'll go through pretty much every scenario that will be put into, you know. So from a full line check to making sure, you know, we'll set up everything, flashing through all the PA speakers, making sure all our communications are working, because that's a big thing in bigger shows too. Is you might have you might have, let's say, 75 inputs off the stage, but you could have easy have another 20 of just communications, because that's how we do our line check. We have to all be able to talk to each other. So every technician backstage has their own mic and their own channel on my console, and so I know exactly who's talking to me. And then you got your video team that needs a feed, and you got the pyro team needs a feed, and then you're inevitably at some point in the tour somebody's going to say, I want a mono mix for the hearing impaired feed, or for the VIP boxes, or something like that. So there's just a lot of stuff that you just gotta make sure you're prepared for, because if you're not prepared, it becomes a major hassle when somebody comes up to you 10 minutes before the band's going on stage and they're like, I need this. And you're like, well, my racks are buttoned up and I'm not going in them 10 minutes before the show, That's just too risky. So moving on from that, then what we'll do is we'll go to production rehearsals. So we'll go to a proper facility where we can put the whole entire show up. And the reason that's important, obviously, there's a lot of fabrication and stuff that needs to be done with the set pieces. We carry our own stage, which allows us to, simultaneously load in tons of stuff at one time. So we can have the stage being built at one end of the arena, and all the set and all the backline goes on it while they're flying all the lighting and sound up, and then it all merges. And then at loadout, it's the opposite. It's stage rolls out, stuff starts dropping in. If you've got to wait for a 74 by 60 foot stage to get disassembled, you're going to be there all night. So a lot of the production rehearsals is about cable management and, okay, I see a problem there, and if I need to get that truss down, do I need to drop the whole thing, or can I do this? It's a lot of logistics that I don't really need to deal with, honestly. I just kind of focus on what I'm doing.
I'm gonna butt in here and ask you a personal question.
Sure.
What's your least favorite frequency?
Oof. Whatever one's feeding back.
Oh, come on, man. I want the personal information. I don't like 2.8.
Well, I was gonna say 3K. I'm not a big fan of 3K, but there's ways to smooth it out.
So you're a front of house engineer. So
Yeah.
for those who don't know, what is your specific role, and where are you located in a fabulous arena when there's a huge crowd around?
I'm the guy that does sound for the audience.
Okay.
So I'm the dude hogging up all the space in the middle of the room.
Do people ever throw crap at you?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. I've had consoles go down. I had a pretty good direct hit of a pint of beer right to the back of my head, and it just kind of went like that.
You must have sucked that night.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. Yeah.
But you are in the glory position, though, the front of house, in the big desk in the crowd.
Yeah. And then there's obviously, it's not just me. We've got 5 people on our sound team, and they're all equally important. I truly believe that. Like, I could not do, what I do without the people that are putting the PA up, and my system tech, Chase, is like, he's a scientist, you know what I mean? When you have so many zones of PA pointing in different directions and everything, it's got to be tuned a certain way. There's a lot of time alignment issues that need to be addressed, and the technology lately has gotten insane with how good it is. But you do have to have a support system, and also, like, everybody on the other end of the snake too. Like, the monitor engineer is directly responsible to a huge extent to how good the band plays. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
If they don't hear what they need to hear at that specific time, cues are missed, and it becomes a cumulative issue, because there could be a a lighting cue that's cued off of somebody's move or something.
A dragon could drop at the wrong time.
Yeah,
These things happen.
they do happen.
They do happen. So what percentage of bands these days or band members would you say are using in-ear monitors?
A lot. At least at the level that I've been working at for the last several years, it's become it's become hugely popular for a few reasons. One, you can obviously hear yourself a lot better. It cleans up the sound of the whole stage because you don't have millions of speakers pointed at microphones. But the technology lately has allowed younger and maybe smaller bands that are just playing clubs to afford a little console that can supply them with a good product. You know, it used to be you had to have a big console, you had to have your engineer, and that was a lot of things that a lot of bands just couldn't afford because it means truck space, it means another hotel room, it needs another, a bus space or another plane ticket, and all those things add up. So, I mean, and the in-ears that are out now just sound phenomenal. I mean, the sub response you can get in some of those things are insane. If kind of a tiny driver the size of a pinhead going down to 20 hertz, it's nuts.
Let's see what is it. So if I was a younger band, obviously a lot younger, but a younger band, and I was going to be playing my first show that actually had monitor engineer, front of house engineer, decent monitors, what advice would you give me as far as working successfully with the sound techs and engineers?
Don't all speak at once.
That sounds like grade school, but that is true.
Well, it is, because a lot of people are, a lot of bands just get up and they might have like 10 minutes perhaps between getting their gear and playing the gig. And a good seasoned monitor engineer will have a relationship with the front of house guy, and he's just gonna go, kick drum, raise your hand if you need it. And 3 people raise their hand, kick, move on, snare. So, pay attention to the engineers, and if the engineers don't have a clue, then you yourself as a band need to be disciplined on and communicative on how you want to execute your sound check.
Wait. If the engineers don't have a clue, doesn't that mean you turn all your amps up louder?
Well, you could do that too.
Works every time.
It works for the band. It doesn't quite work for the dude in the front row that's getting his ears smashed out by a Marshall.
Hey, how are bands generally with stage volume these days? Because sometimes I look at, I know you have the big rows of amps, but I can remember going to see Blackfoot at the Empire Theater, and it was rows of Marshalls, and it was the late 70s, and they were all on.
Yeah.
And I kind of, or you'll even see pictures of local bands in the 70s playing a freaking prom, and it looks like a Woodstock PA, and I'm wondering, how did these dinosaurs survive? So what's stage volume like these days?
Well, again, it depends on the band.
How deaf they are, right?
When I was doing the War on Drugs, it was moderately loud. But we were able to work together, and then you talk with the band and say, hey, this lady's can't hear the vocals, and there's nothing I can do about that. So, and it's that's what people want to do. They want to sing along, and those dudes are amazing to work with, and they were just like, okay, I get it. Let's tilt the amps back. Now the amps are pointed up in the air, and they get what they want, and I get what I need. With the last couple bands I've been working on, though, we don't even have amps on stage. It's all theatrics and set pieces and stuff. So they're off stage in ISO boxes.
Any Kempers going on, or?
Occasionally, but most, and I'm all about Kempers because you can do. It's a very, very powerful tool. But a lot of the bands I'm working with are still purists of, having tube amps, and I like it. You know me, I'm an amp guy, so I I like that consistency. I mean, you do have inconsistencies with voltage and, mics moving around here and there. Or some roadie sitting on the ISO box kicking his feet against it. But yeah, mostly amps, I'd say. At least the types of bands I work for.
All right, so now I'm going to ask another personal question. But you don't have to reveal band venue or anything. Uh-huh. And not if it's recent, but what was one of your worst live sound disasters?
Oh, that's easy. I was in England. I was filling in for a band. I was filling in for an engineer, and I eventually took a full-time job with the band. The band was called AWOL Nation. Mm-hmm. They had a very popular song called Sail at the time. And we're playing Sail, and the crowd got loud at that point. Everybody's singing along. I'm mixing it like 103, 104 dBA. And my console went into full, like, +9, every bus, every input, digital noise. Oh. So you imagine rocking out to a relatively loud show and then the whole thing just going, and you cannot turn it off.
Oh my God.
Yep. I literally just yanked the power to the console. That's all I could do. I couldn't throw down the faders fast enough. And people are screaming, holding their ears. The console I was using at the time had these like hot swappable power supplies in the back. And obviously when you transport the console, it gets tipped up like this. And the early versions of it didn't have brackets to hold in the power supplies. So
was it by the Acme company?
No. But that was about as scary as it gets. I mean, you have scary moments, and you have to prepare for them, and you have to prepare for how you're going to handle them. If something feeds back, you can't just like dump all the faders. You gotta have a plan in place. But that was something that scared the living crap out of me. It was insane. I'm surprised I didn't blow up the whole PA because it was digital square waves going at least 110 dB. It was mental. I'll never forget it.
So like when you travel to different countries, do some countries have like volume police who come in with meters to check? And what is kind of like, what
100.
volumes are they looking for? Or limits are they looking for?
Depends on the health and safety standards of the country. Sometimes it's city specific. Switzerland is notorious for being pretty strict, and even at rock shows in the middle of the mountains where you should be able to go as loud as you want, they're very specific with health and safety issues, and they measure it a few ways. Most of the time it's what they call an Leq measurement, which is volume over time, so it's an averaging system. Mm-hmm. And they'll say, okay, you gotta be at 95 dBA over 5 minutes. So, you gotta learn how to play that Leq, right? So if you got a soft part of the set, you want to take it real soft.
Oh, okay.
Because you want that average to come down because you got a big banger coming up in 3 songs and you're gonna want to punch it.
Tricky.
So that's how that is. Sometimes they have peak measurements, but it's always important to either for me or my system tech to work with the sound police. One, you work with these people every year, and you don't want to get a bad reputation with them because then they're going to pay attention. And if you're a game, if you play a game with them, or if you play by their rules, sometimes they're a little more lenient. And what they usually do is they'll try and find the loudest spot in the room. They'll calibrate to that. So there's a full calibration process so that we understand that we're on the same page, because I I've got a setup with me too. I got a big screen right there that's telling me what I'm hearing, as far as frequency wise and level. So if we're having a discrepancy, and that guy's somewhere in the back office, going, you're at 105, and I'm going, well, I'm at 100. Then who's, it gets tricky. You got to make sure that you guys understand each other, and it'll get very expensive for the band if you don't want to obey those rules.
You don't want the Swiss guys coming out with those long hooting horns from the Ricola commercials and shutting you down with that signal.
It's funny because the festival I'm referring to, they start the day every day with those guys with the giant 10-foot long horns blowing the horns into the mountains. Greenfield Festival in Interlaken. Beautiful, beautiful place.
So real quick, what would you say? Could you give us like your get up, eat, show schedule for a typical day?
Totally. So the last few years, it's been rigging goes in at 6:30 a.m. My assistant would go in at about 7 a.m. and that's when he gets his points, which are when the chains are hanging out of the air for us to apply the PA to. I usually go in at like 9:30. Depends on when my truck is getting tipped, because when you're talking about like 15, 16, whatever trucks, there's a very systematic order as to what's needed first. And if my gear's not going to be off the truck, I'm not going to go in because there's nothing for me to do.
No, you can go play golf.
Yeah. I usually go in at 9, have breakfast, just poke my head around, make sure, say hello to everybody, make sure my gear's not sitting in a pile in somebody's way. And then as soon as it comes out, I build front of house. And I like to build my own gear, pull my snake, get all the cabling from me to the stage set up, help Danny, our monitor guy, set up his world. It's a team effort, I enjoy it. I like to work. I don't like to just kind of show up and do the show. It's I think it's a nice way to build camaraderie and respect among the team, because it is truly, it's a team. So then usually the stage rolls in place by 1 o'clock, noon. And at that point, we can make the final connections between me and the stage. And then the backline guys are, changing strings, changing drum heads, doing that stuff. And about 2:30, we'll do a line check. I'll listen to the system with my guy. Obviously, when you're playing an arena or a giant festival, there's a lot of walking around. Because it's crucial that everything sounds as consistent as possible in all parts of the venue. So we make sure that the nosebleeds are getting proper coverage. All the side hangs, make sure the sub coverage is as even as it can be, which is usually pretty tricky. I'll do virtual sound check with I've got a record system that I can flip my console into a mode that it looks at the recording as if it's a band on stage, so I can make any sort of adjustments.
Cool.
Except for gain adjustments, obviously, because they're printed to tape. But so we'll play around with that for a while, make sure there's nothing weird frequency-wise happening in the room that we didn't notice with our normal sound check tunes. Then we do a line check and take a nap.
Hey, what's your favorite sound check tune?
Depends. What was I using? I was using Daft Punk Moments in Time, I think it's called. The last one that Mick Gazowski mixed sounds absolutely amazing.
Oh, I have to check that one.
Usually some Gwen Stefani. I used to be all into for a long time was older Crowded House, Tears for Fears. To me, a lot of modern mixes don't have dynamics. You know what I mean? They're just so squashed that doesn't really, it doesn't tell me what's going to happen in my show. So I don't want to put on a modern pop song because it's usually so squashed already, and that's
Brick.
Yeah, it's just a big sausage. Yeah, but I've been punishing the Slipknot camp with that Daft Punk song. They probably hear it about easy 10 times a day because I just put it on a loop and we just walk the whole room. And then when we turn it off, everybody cheers.
Oh, good. Good. So, out of the bands you worked with over the years, about what percentage actually know your name?
All of them.
Oh, you must be popular.
Well, it's a very collaborative process. It truly is, and there's been a couple bands that I've gotten hired with that had a pretty hefty relationship with their previous engineer. Maybe somebody who's with them for 10 years or whatever, and they have a style of how they're used to working with that person. And I understand that I'm the new guy, and you want to go in and just say, there's a couple talks you got to have. It's like, what do you want me to do? You want me to replicate the record? Do you want me to do my thing? Do you want me to have fun with effects? Do you want me to send my effects back to you? Most of the time, I get a gig because people, I've toured with them or they've heard me at a festival with another band or whatever, and they just, either liked what I did or we had a good time hanging out after the show. A lot of it's personality, obviously, because nobody wants to live on a bus with a jerk.
Oh, man.
But yeah, it's a very collaborative process. I mean, pretty much 99% of the time. There's very few bands that are just like, this is the way we do stuff. And I tend to not enjoy those gigs as much,
I just thought of a question, man. Do you have a backup in the booth with you in case you get some bad foreign food and have to rush to the bathroom in the middle of a show?
That has happened before as well.
See, I was just making that up, but.
Well, yeah. So, yeah. One, there's a garbage pail that I can, throw up in if I need to. But if it's an emergency, I just hand it off to my assistant because he knows what I do. He sits next to me every day, and so he knows. And once it's set, I mean, you know how mixing is. It's minor adjustments, and he knows he's with me every day, so he knows the solos. He actually had to fill in for me. I had a illness in the family that I had to leave for 3 days, and I said, hey, bro, I gotta leave. I gotta get on a plane. We were in Copenhagen. I said, I gotta get on a plane in 2 hours, and I gotta fly home. And you're doing the show tonight. And he did the whole line check. He knew the language. And he crushed it. I mean, yeah, he did a great job.
So, thank you. Once again, we're live from Sound and Music. I'm Bruce, your host. We're here with Bob Strakele, sound engineer extraordinaire. Due to COVID, he's having to stay home for a while. He's a great engineer. If you'd like to do some recording with him, give us a call at Sound of Music and we'll put you in touch with him. But Bob has another love aside from working with bands and playing guitar. He loves amplifiers.
I do.
So why don't you tell us about your passion for amplifiers and working on them?
Yeah, I honestly don't know how I got into it. I always kind of liked taking stuff apart, and in like 2004, I discovered this website called ax84.com, which is like a cooperative circuit design kind of forum where people discuss they have a couple different projects that you can do, and then there's just years and years of people revising these things. And
wow.
So I said, all right, I'm going to build one of these AX84 amps, and it was I bit off way more than I could chew. I did get it working, but I had no idea what was happening with it. And then I just got bit by the bug. I started building little Fender champs and stuff like that, like more easier circuits. And over the years, I've gotten a bit, some chops to build my own stuff and do repairs. And I'm probably not as fast as some of the people I work with, but I enjoy it. It's therapeutic for me. I mean, it's what I do. When I'm home from tour, my daughter's at school, my wife's working or whatever, I go in my shop and I just work on amps.
So what are a couple of your favorite amp sounds from the past or future? I don't care.
I mean, I've always been like a cranked kind of Marshall Fender dude, but lately I've been working on some really that Dan Electro I was telling you about.
Oh, okay.
This Dan Electro Challenger Series C, which I just restored for a friend of mine. It's like one of those amps that just, you are so inspired to play it. You just want to wake up and play that amp. It's unbelievable. But yeah, I've got a bunch of amps. You know, everything from JMPs to, you know, Voxes. I've got some Soldanos. I've got Selmers. What else do I have in there? Some old Ampegs, V4s and stuff. But I mean, most of the amps I have at home I built myself.
Do you have a Marshall Lead 12?
I do not have a Lead 12.
This brings me another plug. First of all, guys, subscribe to our show so we can keep going, picking up new viewers all the time. I like interrupting guests. That's why I'm doing this. But Sound of Music, we are having a musical yard sale this weekend. Amps, drums, guitars, co-sponsored by 1-3 Audio and someone else who I'm totally forgetting, but that's okay. But if you want to try out a Fender Lead 12, which Billy Gibbons used on the Afterburner ZZ Top album, you can do it here Saturday, 9 to 5. Back to you, Bob.
Where's that amp?
It's here.
All right, we're gonna have a look at that later.
Okay. So,
is it for sale?
So do you have any plan? Have you been selling any? Well, yeah, it's for sale. I'll show it to you. Actually, I was hoping I would lure you that way. It's all a plot. But
Yeah.
Are you selling some amps currently that you build, or do you just do that occasionally?
Yeah. I've had like a kind of a small little company called Bob Amp that one of the first dudes that kind of commissioned an amp from me. Tad Kubler, the guitar player from the Hold Steady in New York. When he first moved from Minnesota, he didn't know what my last name was, so he just put Bob Amp in his phone. And then when he commissioned me to start building some amps from him, he goes, "But I want it to be called Bob Amp." So I've been kind of running with that moniker for I don't know, 12 years, 13 years, something like that. And they are 100% custom built for the player. So I don't mass produce them. It's all one-offs or two-offs, and that gets expensive when you got to custom make two panels and two chassis and stuff like that. But those are kind of more classic, classic designs, and then I put my spin on it. I like older amps, and older amp technology is 100 plus years old, so it's just like making chicken noodle soup, you got chicken in it, you got noodles in it, but what you do with it is what makes it unique, So that's kind of the Bob Amp stuff, and that's, I do a lot of repairs and stuff recently. But I do have a new kind of venture that I've teamed up with.
Are we getting the scoop on this? Are you giving us a scoop?
I'm giving you a little hint.
Okay.
I've partnered up with a guy that's much smarter than I am in the field, and we haven't decided on a name yet, but we do have 4 designs in the works. One pretty much done prototype, and they do some stuff that nothing else does, truly, and it's a lot of brainstorming between him being a circuit designer for so long, and my needs and wants as a sound guy, and also seeing what adding features that I know are tech friendly, because I've worked with so many people that obviously, you have a changeover at a festival and all of a sudden the amp that worked an hour ago isn't working. And so we're putting a lot of sort of diagnostic features into it. They're a pretty interesting feature set, but not in the way where there's switches all over the place and stuff like that. I can't give too much away at this point because it is a few ideas that have never been done before. So
Okay, and then they'll of course be mass produced in China.
not in China, but what the plan is, proper distribution. It's not going to be out of my garage like it's been for the last 15 years.
Let's see. Oh man.
So we're excited. We've been working hard on that for about 6 months. The flagship model prototype is 99% there, and we've got some pretty heavy hitter players that it's getting shipped around to right now. For their opinion.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now we got 2 more questions for you in this in-depth and highly personal interview. I hope we haven't made you sweat too much, Bob. I hope you've had a good time.
I'm still sweating from being on the roof of a house for 10 hours this morning.
Well, that will do that.
I'm doing construction now, by the way, since I'm unemployed.
Let's get Bob in the studio. Come on, guys. Anyway, you get one quick answer on this, one choice. What's your favorite microphone? Come on.
Bayer M160.
Again, just so people hear it.
Bayer M160.
Okay, Bayer M160.
For guitars.
For guitars, okay.
For snare drum, the Bayer M201.
Actually, that's the same, my favorite mic you just said. I have one of those. The Bayer.
Steve Albini once said it's like a 57 if a 57 actually sounded good.
When I first used one of those mics to record, it was like a blanket had been removed.
100%. That is a sleeper of a mic, man. And I gotta be completely honest, I didn't get hip to it for a while. And then I did a bunch of A/B testing. I was starting a tour, and it was literally like a day of getting guitar sounds and a day of getting drum sounds and trying to figure out. And I put the 201 up. I was like, holy crap, where have I been? Yeah, but I have to say that's where I'm at right now. I'm a big fan of Telefunken M80. I mean,
that's a good one too.
A lot of the mics that I use, obviously, I can't use super, can't bring out U87s and stuff on tour.
We'll stop. We're losing people. We're being too geeky. We're being too geeky. So let's go to a more human interest thing to finish out here our interview with Bob Strakele here at Live from Sound of Music. Subscribe. I'm Bruce. Don't forget our music sale this weekend on Saturday, 9 to 5. So, I know things are in confusion, but what do you think the new year will be holding for you?
Well, I hope to be touring again, but I gotta say I'm not too confident that's gonna be able to happen. So hopefully, I can just get this amp company off the ground, continue to support my family, and hopefully work in music. That's my passion, and it's what the only thing I've been doing for, since the late 90s. So hopefully getting back to work or working around music in some way, shape, or form.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Take it easy. Good night.
WSOM Richmond.
Sound of music. I said the sound of music. I said the sound of music. Sound of music.
WSOM Richmond.
Sound of music. I said the sound of music. I said the sound of music. Sound of
WSOM Richmond.